1, 2, 3, 4. One-legged Roger and his one-legged mother lived in a house in downtown Atlanta. One had the
I said I was going to start this webisode this way, was by just reminding myself that I really don't, there's a lot that I don't know. Because to me, it's always about tying it to acting, because that's what the class is. I'm not a race scholar, and that's not what the class is about.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
It's about drawing on, it's about learning how, again, to how you can use what you have, the imagination that you have, drawing on your own personal experiences, your own understanding of what it means to be human, and to, sort of figure out how much of that will be useful in playing this particular character. One of the main things, my main sort of leading questions, the thing that guides me is what I wanted when I was a student in drama school.
Hey.
Dweeb,
What's up?
what's happening, man? What's happening, man?
Dude, it's great to see your face.
Likewise. You got the beard coming in there, I see.
Yeah, I feel like Gandalf.
Nice. You do got the Gandalf thing working there. Hold on, let me get the lighting. This lighting.
Let's check our lighting.
Before you begin,
Yeah.
I need a little more time because I need to eat something.
Do it.
So, is that cool if I eat and then we'll start?
I'm already recording, so if you don't mind me editing around your eating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So I don't mind. I'll eat and talk.
Yeah.
Sure. I've been listening to quite a bit of and reading about John Lewis. Yeah, that message, him talking about love, envisioning the world that part of their training was to also envision the world that you want to see. Have your mind focused, trained on the world, and that you may not see it in your lifetime, but know that it's already done, it's already there.
Yeah, there's a quote, I just read a quote of his, says that if hate is a part of your belief system, you need a new one. It's like, it's so brilliant.
Yep. Yeah, yes.
Yes. It makes me always think about religious institutions and the fallacy of that, that you're a Christian organization and at the center of it is closed-mindedness and fear and judgment and blame. Like, gosh, man.
Yes.
Wake up.
And militarism.
Mm-hmm. God and country.
I got bankers, police, lawyers, exes chasing after me. Oh, they're never gonna get me now. And they say the world might end, and if it doesn't, I'll be free. Oh, they're never gonna get me now. 'Cause I got you, and you are life. You are one good reason to breathe and stay alive. It might be morbid, but it's true. I'd be dead if not for you. You are the end of all the bad I used to.
But what I don't want to do is have some students, that are here in person and other students that are remote.
As it is now at Young Harris, we're going to be teaching in a mask. So they cannot remove the mask even in social distancing. And at first I thought, oh, well, shit, it would almost be better to teach online for scene study and for monologues. But I'm with you. They're all coming back. They're going to be on campus. So my class size is not too large. So I'm just thinking about how can I be of service to them. I'm just going to show up and possibly do scene study first. And then by the time they move for Thanksgiving, then we'll go into monologues. So that would work well for online coaching. And that would be their final. That's what the plan is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this wonderful dynamic that we're in right now, we're doing a scene.
Yeah.
This could be our break, Sam. Someone could watch us together and be like, those two guys need their own show.
Yeah, I don't know what show that would be.
We got to do it. We can make it happen.
Well, we can figure that out later.
Hell yeah, we got plenty of time.
Yeah, people want this. We got here.
What did I do? I made a mistake. What did I do? I made a mistake. I referred to my students as people of color. And then someone said, no, refer to me as black. I was like, oh, okay, will do. Internally going, oh, I always thought that was rude. Like I thought you refer to African-American students. And they were like, no, you don't refer to people that are Irish-American or German-American. I'm American. I was like, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That whole, black, African-American, gender pronouns, identity.
Do you gather and address that right off the bat with your students? Pronouns, identity?
Not identity, but pronouns I have. Then James Caleri from our group, he pointed out, he says, he stopped doing it because there are students who don't want to, for their own reasons, they don't want to share that. Maybe they haven't decided for themselves yet, or maybe they just whatever, they don't want to do it. So I honestly, I do start first class. I ask them, I give mine, and I ask them for theirs. I may even ask them, if they would prefer to not do that, to not make that a part of, is that something that, that they don't feel like they want to do. I'm definitely not afraid of making a mistake. It really could be really a natural bridge to, in the same way, not knowing how you would like to be referred, what your ethnicity is, your relationship to race. I don't know those things. But I could, if they're important to you, you wanted to communicate that to me, you could share it. You could tell me so. And that's how I would know. That's how I would know.
How's the Webersode going for you so far?
Going good, man. I'm glad I had sustenance. I like the pacing of it. You have a warmth. Of course, it's also hot here, so I don't know if it's you or if it's probably you.
It's probably you. It's probably you. Yeah, anytime that you feel like, oh shit, now I'm starting to sound like AM radio or not feeling like yourself, you can always just stop. It's good for me to know that too, because sometimes I'll start to get into interview mode. I have to remind myself, I'm not Dick Cavett. This is not what this is about. It's about, just having a chat with people I admire, which you are one of them.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here with a fellow TDPer.
Yeah, man. What a great experience that was.
I'll never forget when we were all sitting around that day with Peter, just one by one,
Yeah.
Learned so much about you, learned so much about the group. I thought just where he's coming from. He says, I'd like to know, and I've incorporated this, my own version of it into my own class. The way I begin, I refer to I break the semester up into thirds, and the first third, I give it a title. The first third is getting to know who you're in the room with, both with with fellow students, but it's also for me getting to know them, who I'm in the room with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then the second third, one semester I did the second third was about building trust. And then the third is putting it all together. I mean, another thing I do is, since we're working on thought groupings, they remove the punctuation, working on August Wilson, so they take all the punctuation out. And I'm teaching them about how, you know, August Wilson, you need to group the thoughts. That's where the music comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And so because we're talking about, that, I'm wanting sort of training their ear. So I give them the recording so that they can then also go back, and they also have my feedback on there and their classmates' feedback. So they do it, we talk about it, and then they can go and listen to it, because I give them that because I'm also going to send them a self-assessment.
Hmm.
So I'm going to ask them, how did you do in terms of this, in terms of this, in terms of this? What do you think would have helped? What would you like to work on? What are you planning to work on moving forward? And whatever they identify is what I'm going to grade them on.
Is that the same class as for non-majors?
Yes, I've only done that with non-majors, that part. I just added that this past semester.
That's awesome. Nice. Do the white students work on August Wilson as well?
Yes. It's majority white. Yeah. If I have 15 students, 10 to 12 of them on average will be white. And of that 10 to 12, 8 to 10 of them will be women. Yeah, so they did Jitney.
Really?
Yeah, they did a scene from Jitney.
And educationally, do any of the students, do they feel uncomfortable, or do they have a conversation like, I don't know if I can?
They definitely feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them know that's a good thing. Now, mind you, like early on, a student, she's half Dominican, half African American. Uh-huh. She approached me one day after class. She wanted to talk to me, and she said she was concerned about white students doing August Wilson. About basically, what her concern was about them potentially not respecting it or not valuing it, and how painful that would be if they didn't take it as seriously. They didn't take it seriously, and so. I'd already thought about that. I've been thinking about that. I've been working on an August Wilson curriculum for years, but I was thinking about doing it with high school age students. So I needed to, to make some adjustments, which I've been in the process of doing. And one of the main ones was becoming confident that the space would be able to hold white students, non-Black students feeling uncomfortable, Black students feeling uncomfortable for their own reasons. And so what I ended up doing is I assured her that, preparing the class, that I anticipated, I understand that concern, and you can trust that I'm going to do everything in my power to create a space where you will always feel seen and heard. And we will address things as they come.
Hearing you talk about it, I'm like, it makes me think a lot. I don't know if I would be comfortable teaching it, but that was one of the.
I wasn't comfortable.
Right.
I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. But I was not comfortable. I'm not comfortable. I mean, teaching at a university teaching in the South, teaching at this university. I moved. I didn't even know that UNC had a Confederate statue on its campus in the center of the quad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is in a way I'm sort of embracing it, and as an artist, in terms of what we do, in terms of the playwrights, they write these plays, and the playwrights, they're counting on us. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but they're counting on us to engage, to be in that space of like not knowing. So that's what I try and we do, but also acknowledging that, we were talking the other day, one of the main things, my main sort of leading questions, the thing that guides me is what I wanted when I was a student in drama school. As a Black student, African-American student in drama school, working on August Wilson. It was just, I needed help with getting this process of like being invited. But there's this invitation to get to know yourself. I remember like this exercise where you draw a line down the middle of the page and you put your name at the top of one side of the line and the character's name at the other. You go down and you say age, but your age, their age, all these characteristics. And then you look at the list and see what you have in common and where you differ. Mm-hmm. And that begins like one way of just sort of getting a sense of like, okay, this is what I will need to, this is where I will need to bring my craft, right? This character is different than me in this way, but I can use these things that we have in common, right? I want to keep that. So for example, this character and I are both African-American, but this character, was born in 1918. I was born, right? I need to research that kind of thing. And it was sort of like, but we didn't go far enough with that. Like we were doing Meisner work and there was all this stuff that was going on in me. Mm-hmm. But the instructor, who was white, she did not do what Peter J did. I'm sorry, your listeners weren't there. I'm talking about something that, so maybe, I don't know, but when we were in TDP, we were working on that scene, and I was able to now, right, as an adult and having done all the things, therapy, all the stuff that I have done to continue getting to know myself so that I could bring it to my work. What Peter J was able to do, I mean, I ended up having to do it, but Peter J created this situation. Peter J is African-American, I'm African-American, that's important. Like to your earlier point, like you may not feel comfortable doing that. Most probably white professors, I mean, I know they don't. But to me, that is what's happening. People are reading How to Be an Anti-Racist and reading White Fragility and my white friends are telling me that they're in book clubs. And they go, yeah, no, I know I'm a book exec, but we are in book clubs. White people are forming book clubs and reading these books. And that's great. That to me is when I was a student, I thought, wow, I wish that, they auditioned me and they brought me here, but they're not prepared to serve my needs.
Peter J created an experience where he was able to help you move your craft forward because there was a lot of there was trust, meaning that, oh shit, this is scary. I don't know if I want to do this. I'm gonna go. But you had that connection, so you went there. And that trying to do that for my students of color can be dangerous without a certain sort of conversation and that trust established. Be like, I'm leaning into a Black student too hard now, expecting them to do something when there is no trust, then I'm just not seeing the student that's in front of me. Like if that is with Shakespeare, or if that is with Tennessee Williams, or if that is with maybe a playwright that the actor hasn't even had the welcome to say, you know what, David, I don't feel comfortable in this character from the get-go. And so trying to figure out that trust, that's got to be that's got to be day one, or at least something that I'm aware of, or it's gonna be friction, possibly. I'm seeing you're talking about something that I'm sitting down in my acting classes with my fellow students of color and Black students together, and I could see the one-on-one communion between the white professor and the white students, and where that has been not successful with the white professor and Black students through the history of my acting training. Does that make any sense?
It does, and what I want to say is that it might be interesting, and helpful if you were to say that to your students. The reason why I think that could be a good thing is because you're beginning with, because to me it's always about tying it to acting, because that's what the class is.
Right.
That we're not going to have, I'm not a race scholar, and that's not what the class is about.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
It's about drawing on, it's about learning how, again, how you can use what you have, the imagination that you have, drawing on your own personal experiences, your own understanding of what it means to be human, and to, sort of figure out how much of that will be useful in playing this particular character. That's sort of a part of it. And so that thing about, and what it feels like to tell the truth, what it feels like to feel a sense of authenticity. You know what I mean? What it feels like to come from the heart, right? In your real life, right? So you're sort of doing that, in that moment. I will say, I think, when I was doing that with Peter J, I don't know, you may recall that there was a moment, you all didn't know it, but I knew it. There was a moment where I thought about giving up. I just felt stuck, and I didn't think that I literally had a thought in my head that literally said, you know what, I think you've gone as far as you can go today.
I saw it in the room, and I thought, Sam's about to say, this is not the right time.
That's right, because that's when you and I bonded.
Right.
Because you did, and we talked about that.
Right. And I was inspired when you went there. I was like, oh man, be that actor, David. David, be that actor.
I realized that what was happening in the scene, in terms of where it was hitting me, this actor, is what the character was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just needed to allow myself to go, this reminds you of something that you have experienced, Sam, but you are playing this character. You can play this character, right? And what that was it was being in that vulnerable space. It was crazy because the character was in a vulnerable space. He and this woman are outsiders, and they're in the home of a wealthy white couple, and they don't feel like they belong. They don't feel, well, here I was, the actor in this place, and I'm looking at the audience, and there's the vast majority of the people are white.
Right.
It literally in the space that I'm, right? And that's so frequently my experience throughout my life. Well, had I stopped there, and some students have done this, stop there, sometimes blame the instructor, sometimes literally go to the chair, go to this professor is, or they say, I don't want to do, I did my research before I taught this class, speaking with Black, mentors of mine, African-American Black professors who had Black students come up to them and tell them, I don't want to do August Wilson. In the same class where they have another African-American student saying, can I do August Wilson? Can I do something that's close to me?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's not a big deal. It's not a problem. I mean, I think, here's what I mean by that. Even Peter, I learned afterwards that Peter, when I was working, he was on pins and needles because he didn't know if he had pushed me too far. Peter's been teaching a long time, been acting a long time. He was like, I didn't know if I had, it's like he was so glad that it worked out. But to me, the blessing was it helped me to understand maybe what students, to understand that that student who approached me, because of the experience I had, when this student approached me after class and said, I am uncomfortable. I'm a little concerned about white students. It was the exact same thing. It's what students of color, basically, it's like inviting you into my house and showing you what's in my closets, showing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And living in a society, and even going to a school that has a Confederate statue and in so many ways is communicating. You know, like the students, you're just moving around, and then you come into a classroom and you're given something, even if it's not August Wilson, if it's, you know, like even in Shakespeare, in this time that we're living in, you know, students, because students feel so strongly and are very outspoken, but have the teaching professionals, are they ready? Right? Are they ready to understand where these students are coming from?
I got bankers, police, lawyers,
Takes so
exes
much
chasing
trust.
after me. Oh, they're never
Now, like if
gonna
I hadn't
get
had the opportunity
me
with another
now.
acting teacher to go deep in the classroom, I wouldn't know if I had the ability to go there.
Yeah, I mean, what I would like to see is I feel like it was too much for, honestly, I felt like it was too much for me to overcome. I would like, I mean, there was all of this, I feel like it could have been beneficial. I think it will be beneficial now moving forward. If this willingness, this acknowledgement that is happening,
Mm-hmm.
and the grieving that I hear about that is happening amongst white people. And, you know, I think the questions of what do we do now? What would make this better? I had a great conversation with Joby, who was in our group, actually.
Yeah.
And
Joby.
he was sharing with me a little bit about, like, in amongst some, you know, white people that he knows. And Joby is white. Kind of just sharing with me some of what's happening over there. When I go back to that classroom, when I was in school, but also, you know, in that room with Peter J. that we were in, you know, I want those rooms to change in terms of that kind of sort of felt like a bit of an adversarial relationship. It felt like an obstacle that was, I think that understanding, the same understanding that I need to have playing a role in August Wilson, the same sort of work, the same sort of research, the same that kind of knowledge, the white instructor and all of the white students in the class need to have too, because it's American history. God, I mean, I wouldn't want anybody to teach anything that they didn't, that they couldn't really get behind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They couldn't, like, you know, you don't have to love everything, but like if you couldn't even like find something that you really love about it, you know what I mean? That because that's the energy that, I mean, that brings you into the class, that you know, that feeling that you want to impart this thing.
Had my undergraduate scene study class, he was the benchmark to get to, you know, junior year.
Okay.
And he's still there at UIC. His name's Derek Sanders, and he's Black.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know him.
Yeah. And he's an amazing scene study teacher. He, you know, the vibe at UIC is if you can pass through Derek, you can graduate. I trusted him in that class to be able to take some different leaps. Throughout the rest of our time together, I've had to reach out to him and say, you know what, you know, my privilege got in the way of my relationship with you, and I apologize for that. Which I hope he's appreciated. And but when we were in, like, you know, junior ensemble or senior ensemble, we were creating something together. And I don't feel like I was as strong as an ensemble member for him as maybe I would have been instinctively for someone like Yasin Payankov, who's white, you know?
Yeah.
And I saw that. I was like, shit, man, I did him wrong by not giving him, you know, I was, as being an older actor of the ensemble, I could have helped him out a lot, but I had problems with the material, and I had issues with my attitude. My ego got in the way of it, and I think it specifically it was my privilege and my whiteness.
David, I think that that's the kind of thing that white students would benefit. Some white students would benefit from having an instructor like you in a class as part of, you know, demonstrating a point or pointing out something or talking about something, but finding a way, but modeling, right? Being a student, having a Black professor in this particular situation, and then, you know, becoming a professional, becoming a teacher, having this, you know, your mind open. And this is all about, again, about knowing oneself. Right? Knowing oneself. And I mean, you're talking about then reaching back. You're kind of talking about how to be a student, a way of being a student. How, like, hey, listen to me as someone who I'm thinking about, like, oh, knowing what I know now, I would have done this differently. And I can see how this about white privilege, you know, and like being, you know, I'd be curious, like, sort of what you mean by that.
Very skilled at what he does, and he's a professional and absolutely worthy of me being submissive to his teaching, to be able to service the story and to service my talent moving forward. But for some reason, my ego got in the way of his instruction. Why is that? Well, I look at that now as my white privilege.
You know, I have a friend who she's done a lot of anti-racism work, and she's a white woman. She's in her 60s. And, you know, I became friends. She also was a therapist. She's worked in education. But, you know, I've kind of practiced a lot with her. She leads racial literacy groups, anti-racism, you know, whiteness groups. She leads whiteness groups. And for white people, and I talk a lot, I talk to her about a lot of these things to kind of understand my students, understand myself as well. Because I definitely want to create a space where, you know, with all those games where, you know, a good game has a certain amount of risk. It has, you know, distinct boundaries so that, you know, if you're within them or outside of them, and that means something. You know, it requires, you know, listening, paying attention. You know, if you're in your head too much, you know, you miss stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that same way of, like, and then, you know, it's about bonding and bringing people together. So if you have a whole class and it begins with the instructor, where you can say something that embarrasses you, that has to do with race or gender or one of these things, and it's understood that in this class, you know, hey, whatever you feel like you need to go and talk to and say, hey, this happened in class, to the chair, what have you. I mean, we can let the chair know, hey, we have our syllabus. This is what I'm doing in my class. This is where I'm at as a person. And this is how I am trying to serve the students in this moment as a white professor. And I recognize that there are these particular obstacles. But there's this greater thing, which is I see this great need and this great opportunity, and I'm going to try and fill it. And as I say that, that is what I would have loved to have had. I had great teachers, but that one particular piece I had to go off and do on my own, and it's huge. It's a huge piece. No student. I mean, what I was able to do with Peter J, it would have been amazing to have had that opportunity in school. I don't know. I mean, I'm a seasoned actor now, and I'm grown, and I've done a lot of work on myself. But it would have been good for it to have been invited into that, and for someone to have created a space, right?
That's not handled. I can't learn from Gregory Wallace. I can't learn from Peter J. What a shame that is. You know, I can't learn from you. How limiting is that in terms of my education? Just like you said with the Confederate statue on your campus. I mean, we have a huge one. It's called Stone Mountain, Georgia. Every day people drive past it and see it. People picnic, and they, you know, it's so blatant what we're asking people to deny that's right in front of us, you know. So having the conversation and maybe being a little bit embarrassed by my ignorance is worth being able to have a relationship with so many great artists and educators and hopefully students as we move forward, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it would be amazing, you know, I think back on like all of the plays that I did. The playwright was African American. The majority of the characters were African American, and the director was white, and it was sort of a white theater, regional theater, and the director did not talk about, you know, the influence of racism on these characters and how they might view their world, what it might mean to them, how it might affect their present state of being, which the thing I was talking about that comes under Uta Hagen's "Who Am I?"
Mm-hmm.
That present state of being thing, like the ways that, you know, that African Americans, we talk about exhaustion, you know, of always sort of this hypervigilance on this moving through the world. You know, who do I need to be? Like sort of acting all the time. Who do I need to be in this particular situation so that these people, you know, won't feel threatened by me? So why am I doing all that? So that I can move my life forward. Right? Ron Van Loo talks about that, right? Like that characters. He was asked in the first TDP I did, someone asked him, you know, Ron, how do you teach playing actions? You know, and I just love Ron in the way that he teaches. I mean, he started to unpack it. You could tell that he sort of went back to, I guess, his own progression in terms of the way he talks about it. He doesn't necessarily use that language. He said, because he learned, I hope I'm not misquoting him, but basically that sometimes giving students a lot of that sort of like language, playing action, that it can just be a bunch of words in their head and they can't, you know, you want them to be in their body. He definitely said that. He says, I learned that it's in the body. That's all this knowledge and intelligence. It's in the body, you know. And, but he says, I think, he answered the question by saying, you know, I think that, he says, you know, that human beings want to move their lives forward. And David, I think if I didn't say anything else, man, about this whole thing, I think that's the thing, honestly. If I had to say one thing, you know, no matter the color of no matter the race, you know, the color of the teacher, that if they can talk about, hey, to a student who says they don't want to do something or whatever it is, it's like, just consider, you know, that this character is trying to move their life forward. And what does that mean? What are the obstacles that they perceive that are in their way? And you want a teacher, just like I think you want a director who's been there before you get there.
Yeah.
right? So this director, he's a white director, but we go in these places around these particular issues, he's got nothing. So we had all that labor to do. And it's the same thing in the class. And I think that the African-American students, they need to, it's important that they deserve, like I deserve, they deserve the same level of education. They deserve the same level of attention. They deserve to have a space where, like, I would love to talk with some of those students, Black students who said that they did not want to do August Wilson. I would love to have a conversation with them, not to make them do anything, but to really, to tell them what my own experience, and talk about the vulnerability. And I'd be curious to know, because I've heard other professional actors, African-American actors, say that they had very similar things happen, similar experiences when they were in school, about having to navigate that whole thing, and feeling sort of very alone in it. And I can understand if a student were to tell me after I told them my own experience, they were like, yeah, that's it. That's it. Like, why do I feel like so Black. I feel like I'm the Black one telling the Black story. And it's really not about August Wilson. It's about the dynamic in the room. They have not been made to feel, perhaps, that their particular needs, when it comes to feeling brave enough, safe enough to be brave enough to be uncomfortable. You know, when I was doing that scene, man, I felt like I was just like sharing all these secrets. And when you listen to Meryl Streep, you listen to these great actors talk, they say, like, that's exactly when you're acting well, that's where you are. You feel like, well, Ray Dooley, when I told Ray Dooley the story, he said, he said, oh, embarrassment. I said, what? He said, Anne Bogart wrote an article. That's how I learned about the article. That article is connected to that experience that way. Need great mentors.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Well, also, August Wilson, you can't have a conversation about August Wilson without having a conversation about Lloyd Richards.
I feel like the torch has been handed down, from Lloyd Richards to Marion McClinton to Ruben Santiago Hudson and various other people, Kenny Leon. Brandon is he's an actor who's acted in a bunch of August Wilson plays, directed by Ruben Santiago Hudson, and now Brandon has been directing for the last several years. He and his wife, Crystal Dickinson, who's also an accomplished actress, she was nominated for the Tony for Clybourne Park. They came last year and did a workshop on teaching August Wilson at the conference. And the purpose was to offer to everyone, but particularly to those who feel disinvited, to white instructors, to white professors, to embrace, to give them the tools to enter, the key to the lock, to enter, so that, and Brandon talked about his instructors. He had the same experience I did, him having to do all of that part on his own and not having instructors. He wants to give them the tools to do better than his instructors were able to do for him. And so Stella Adler, one of her students, compiled a bunch of her teachings, recordings of her teaching. She would give these basically lectures on the great playwrights, right? And so he wrote 2 books. One, Stella Adler, basically on the great American playwrights, and then Stella Adler on the great European playwrights. And of course, they're all men, all white men. Still, nevertheless, that's what it was at that time. I got something from the introduction of this book, or maybe the first chapter, that to me is what it is. She says, actors, you should view yourself as the interpreter. that actors must understand the playwright and the world that made them.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That they came out of a certain time, they saw the world a particular way, and they may be incorporating their vision of the world or how they want it to be or what have you, but they were shaped. So you have to understand that. And if students did that let's say for August Wilson, even for any American playwright, you'll find yourself, needing to look at Reconstruction, needing to look at the Civil War to understand why, we are the way we are now. So, but you're doing all that work so you can act and live believably, as believably under imaginary circumstances as possible. I'm just going to read what I wrote. I wrote, studying Shakespeare. I wrote this down as I was reading that article that I sent to you about decolonialization. Studying Shakespeare may help teachers teach students about power, about abuse of power, about the long ongoing struggle for justice. Yeah, Patsy Rodenberg said, it's actually on a YouTube clip, I think that she says it, at Michael Howard Studio. She says that Shakespeare is saying in all of his plays, you mustn't abuse your power.
That is super helpful. That's useful. I'm going to find that link and I'm going to put it right there.
Oh, dig it. Yeah, that would be cool. Because Shakespeare can seem sort of so removed initially. It is very much so. I mean, I think even maybe more so now, because he's white, and they're talking about England. So like there's this feeling that sort of like they're all white.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like those for students or even actors, that those could be obstacles or barriers that I think it makes sense for those things to sort of be there, and that maybe a way in. You're talking about like abuse of power. And then some things that are happening today. These ways of thinking, they go back. Of men thinking about, sometimes they're not even, that's the thing that really pointed in the article, they're not necessarily looking to exclude women. They're just, I'm a man, and so I'm going to use me, as the model, as the default.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah, the humanity of Shakespeare, the usefulness of acting in Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Patsy argument still is a powerful way in, and also then to examine all the implicit obstacles that come with doing Shakespeare, the white, the 400 years, the British. There's a lot of things to the white to examine and not to not ignore.
Yeah, and I think that conversation about, again, like how we got here, I mean, it's similar to like the conversation about Confederate monuments. Some people feel that they should come. I mean, a lot of people, we don't want them down. Other people feel like they ought to stay up, but people don't necessarily agree who are on those sides. They're not necessarily in agreement about the why. Like some people think that they ought to stay up, but that they also ought to be, not that they are, on the side of the Confederacy, but they feel like remove it from there and put it in the museum, but keep it so that we don't forget, that we remember, that there was a revisionist history that was written, so that it was revised, so that we don't forget that. You could study, that's still part of our history. It doesn't change that it happened. I think it'd be interesting, to have conversations potentially about colonialism, in Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
To understand where he was a playwright. He wrote plays. That was what he did. It's like we have playwrights writing. We have playwrights writing now. They're writing about things that are going on now, and they're shaped by the relationship between men and women, and that I think that's sort of the way Stella, sort of has trained me to think about putting the playwright in their time as a way of understanding. You know, Denzel Washington was my favorite actor. He'd done Othello. Lawrence Fishburne had done the film. I wanted to do Othello.
Mm-hmm.
But I've grown a lot. The world has changed. I mean, I've gotten into acting, but I also, in reading more of the history, and also, you know, as part of my preparation for August Wilson, I thought, man, I'm on to something here, and there is so much I don't know about who I am, my people, this country, not just my people, but how this country came to be, that because of its segregation, even in our history, like if we ever begin to really, if we get beyond that, start to get past that, you know, and begin to become willing to acknowledge, then it will be the beginning of a whole new, you know, world of possibilities, of stories, you know, beyond this is a Black story, this is a white story, this is a, you know, Native American story, this is a Cuban story, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Which means that this time is a very precious time. It holds, it's revolutionary in that way.
Yeah, and I think if so, yes. So if I had to do Shakespeare, or if I was not understanding why I was doing Shakespeare, it, you know, I think if I had a teacher who was beginning there and saying, whether it's Shakespeare, it's August Wilson, I'm teaching you this, and about bringing yourself. I mean, I can now bring myself. I understand how to bring myself into Shakespeare and still accomplish, you know, to speak the language, you know, as it's meant to be spoken. But to be honest with you, you know, and a lot of times in doing Shakespeare, you know, I wasn't into it because I just didn't feel like it. I felt like I had to work to be a part of it. The people who were putting it on, you know, they just didn't know, or they didn't. I mean, which is why I think this is an exciting time. All these things can change, and our relationship to Shakespeare can absolutely change if these conversations that we're having, if those also change, and they are. And if they continue to do that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, wow, we said an hour. We talked for.
Well, we could always end on that note, and I could edit it together, and we can maybe have a part 2 to this conversation. Yeah.
This was great. It's good to see you.
Great to see you. This is so useful. I'm glad that you were able to do it. And I have a better idea of how I can be of better service to my students. Students of color, specifically Black students, African-American students. How I can help them have an experience in the room that's going to give them the tools that they are craving, and that's priceless. That's great, as opposed to being an obstacle for them. That I don't want.
This has been great, man. I've learned a lot about you too. Yeah, it was great to revisit that moment where I think that's where we became friends.
I believe so. I think that was definitely a moment of we bonded, and then we were both moonlight in a pond together.
That's right. That's right.
And
yeah.
that's our foundation together.
Yeah, man.
1, 2, 3.
Well, it's sturdy. It's a sturdy foundation.
Really is, man. I love seeing you. I love talking to you, and I'm glad that we've been able to keep checking in with each other as these years start to pile up on us. And you know, I'll edit this together and send it off to you, and have a look at it. And if there's something that you don't like about it, then I'll change it before I broadcast it.
I appreciate that, David. Thank you, man. All right.
Bye.
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 And now here's my